Welcome to the Water Trough, where we can't make you drink, but we will make you think. My name is Ed Drozd, the Small Business Doctor, and I'm really excited you chose to join me here as we discuss topics that are important for small business folks just like you. If you're looking for ideas, inspiration, and possibility, you've come to the right place. Join us as we take steps to help you create the healthy business that you've always wanted. Welcome back to the Water Trough. This is Ed Drozd, the Small Business Doctor. Today I'm joined by my guest, Kyle Swanson. Kyle is the founder of Ziel Leadership. Ziel means aim in German, and in Dutch it means hearts and souls. Ziel Leadership is on a mission to aim hearts and minds to connect people to their purpose. Ziel taps into the incredible energy when people align their sense of purpose to the mission of the organization. And essential to that is a vibrant organizational culture that cares. And care doesn't necessarily mean holding hands while walking down the beach. It means we've got each other's backs. We look out for each other. Caring, or benevolence, is an essential ingredient of trust. And where you have trust, you build psychological safety within a group. And that's what Ziel partners with organizations to do, to meet them where they are, to clarify the difference between where they are and where they aspire to be, and then mapping the journey to start putting hands and feet on promises to make things better. Kyle, that is a fantastic statement of your mission and your vision. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
It is a pleasure to have you here. I really like the introduction that you crafted for us because it clearly embodies the sentiment of what Ziel Leadership is up to. It's really important that we can convey our message clearly, and I think you've done just that. So today I'd like to talk with you about a program that you are co-founding with a business partner, I presume?
Yep.
And this is called Live Life Aligned. So tell us about the Live Life Aligned program, please.
Live Life Aligned is a way for us to bring our mission to life, that there's this intersection between mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And there's just a few skills that people can develop that'll make a really big difference, both in their personal and professional life. And so Live Life Aligned is a way to bring that into practice. Emotional intelligence there's a really elegant model out there that's around self-awareness, other awareness, relationship management, and then organizational awareness. And so while that model is really helpful and the research is really great, it's hard to put it into practice. And so through our research and through working with our clients over the last several years, putting things into practice, we've aligned around this aware, able, accountable model. That in the moment, the more aware, self-aware, and socially aware that I am, the more able I can bring or integrate both technical skills, right? They're a project manager and they apply agile or a waterfall method of project management or change management or whatever. There's a lot of technical skills that they need to bring to bear. And they need the soft skills to integrate those soft skills, whether it's listening to influence and things of that nature. So when we talk about able, it's really integrating those technical and soft skills that are going to help us move closer to our goals and aspirations. And then accountable is in the moment, taking that quick look back or that kind of look in to say, okay, am I moving closer? Are we making progress towards our goals and aspirations? Are we moving in the right direction so that I can course correct? And so there's this consistent loop between the more aware I am, both self and socially, the more able I am to integrate the technical and soft skills that I need to in that moment, and the more accountable I am to moving towards my goals and aspirations, then the more likely I am going to be successful in achieving those goals and aspirations.
First, a moment, go back to the emotional intelligence component itself. You gave a brief explanation of it, but I imagine a lot of people are not totally clear on what that means. So just a really concise definition of the term, please.
Yeah, good question. I think the most common model comes from Daniel Goleman and research that he did with Annie McKee and Richard Boyatzis. And that's the aware, able, accountable model is just a distillation of that, or kind of an extraction of that. It's just a way to put it into practice in the moment. And emotional intelligence is really about being connected to myself and understanding that how I feel in any given moment reveals something about my values and beliefs. And that the more clear I can get on what I'm feeling in the moment, the more clear I can get on what I need. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky found that we make about 95% of our decisions in the moment are made from our intuition. They're made, we don't think first, we feel first, then we act, and sometimes we think about it. That's sort of the model. And if you think of it this way, if you're driving your car and the car in front of you slams on their brakes, the first thing you experience is it's the emotion, the feeling of the next thing you do is act. You hit your brakes, and you don't
Right.
even need to think about how much to hit your brakes. Your body just knows. And so you hit your brakes a right amount to stop in time. And then the words will fly. So the first thing that happens is you experience then you hit your brakes, you act, and then the words fly. Then you'll, say whatever it is on your mind
Whatever you're going to
to
say.
express. It's not the other way around. We don't think and then act. We feel first, then we act, and then we think about it. And the average adult makes about 35,000 decisions every day. How many of those decisions do you make consciously? So we do act on our feelings a lot, and it doesn't mean that we're emotional in the sort of terms of endearment, a box of Kleenex sobbing by the fire. It means that we make a lot of our decisions based on our intuition, how we feel in the moment. And we haven't necessarily thought those things out. So what emotional intelligence really equips people to do is to really become more aware of what they're feeling in the moment and what other people are feeling in that moment, because the people around you are also acting in the moment based on their emotional center. And so when we're aware of how we feel and other people feel, we're able to exert greater influence on what's happening around us. And emotions are contagious. And so just being aware that depending on how some other people around me feel, that's going to affect me. And so the more aware I can be, like, okay, this is not necessarily my emotions. This is just the room that I'm in. I do a lot of work in manufacturing and research and development, working with different teams in those spaces. And when you're in a group full of engineers, there's often but no, I think first, right? Or I'm not emotional. And that's one of the challenges with things like emotional intelligence is it is hard. So when we think about self-awareness and other awareness, in the research, there's two kinds of empathy: affective empathy and cognitive empathy. And affective empathy is my capacity to feel what you're feeling. And I resonate with the engineers and programmers and people that don't have a high level of affective empathy, because I don't always feel what other people are feeling either. Even when, as a facilitator, sometimes I really have to pay attention to things because I won't notice that everybody is doing the pee-pee dance and desperately needs to go use the restroom. And it's time for a break, right? And I'm busy in my head thinking about, okay, I just need to finish this topic and we'll wind this down and then we'll go to break. And it's not that I'm inherently selfish. I'm just not over the top. It's just more that I don't feel that as much as I know other facilitators just have a keen sense of affective empathy. But cognitive empathy is a muscle that we are all capable of flexing. And so while I may not be as tuned into what other people are feeling, I am capable of noticing. And that's where cognitive empathy comes into play. And what I'll often ask those groups is, how many of y'all have ever experienced failure? Raise your hand. How many of y'all have ever experienced a loss of someone that you love? How many of y'all have ever experienced a bad breakup that you didn't want, but they didn't want to stay with you? And how many of y'all have made a big bet for a business and it failed? And most people can connect to that.
Right.
So the thing with cognitive empathy isn't whether or not we're capable, it's whether or not we're willing to be vulnerable, to say, you know what, I've been there before. I've never been laid off, but I have 4 kids plus my nephew who my ex-wife and I have raised since he was 10. And in my career through 8 and 9, the Great Recession, you can even right now, some of the challenges economically, just the headwinds and concerns of the world, that it's terrifying sometimes. So I could imagine how terrifying it would be. Like, how am I going to take care of my family? in this space. So
Right.
there is am I willing? Am I not just I'm capable? Am I willing to say, God, that's awful. I'd be scared to death, and tap into that emotion with someone. So I don't have to have a high level of affective empathy to be self-aware and socially aware. I just have to be willing to really notice. And that's where
That's
care
the
comes into play.
And that's the first step, aware in your program, to be aware. And I surmise that awareness is acknowledging that others are experiencing their own journey, and that if nothing else, I have to accept that. And whether I can be empathic in the traditional sense, as you say, affective empathy, or aware cognitively, is a big deal. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing about compassion. Empathy is what is my allowing myself to feel with you. Compassion is what am I going to do with that? And so
Right.
compassion doesn't mean I can fix it. It just means I'm going to be with you in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to try to fix it for you. I don't have to take ownership of your struggle or your challenge. Like, I can't fix cancer. I can't fix your unemployment. I'm not independently wealthy enough to cover that, but I
Right.
can care for you in the way that you need, not making assumptions about, well, what would I want? Maybe I'll bring you a bag of groceries or something. There is a difference there. And if I just take the time and sit with you in that space,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm vulnerable with you and just allow you to share, I'll tap into what you need. And there's boundaries about what I'm capable of doing. That's where we start to put hands and feet on that space, is really around compassion. And I have to have compassion for myself. What am I capable of offering? What am I capable of doing? And compassion for you, which is an expression of care.
That's really cool. I like the 3 steps in your model. I always say, first, be aware. If you can't see it, sense it, or have an idea about it, there's nothing you can do. First, be aware.
Yeah.
If you see smoke, presume there's some fire somewhere. If you can't breathe, realize you probably have to get outside. There's probably carbon monoxide in the house. It's a very simplistic thing, is it not? But yet, I think we tend to get in our way when it comes to awareness. There's a whole host of things, be it ego or so many other things, get in the way. Say, well, I'm not going to be a softie and deal with my emotions and stuff like that. But first, be aware that regardless of how you feel about them, they exist. Right?
Yeah. You're going to act on your feelings whether you like it or not. You'd be hard pressed to find a person that never got to the back half of a terrible interaction with a person they love, where they didn't get swept off their feet by their emotions. And I don't care who they are. They said things, or I've said things to people I love that are awful. I got to the back half of that conversation and it's just a swirl of, how did I even get there? You just get swept off your feet.
Yeah.
And that happens. So awareness is being clear on, before you let that happen, it's being aware of, ooh, I feel angry. Why am I angry?
Right. As you're slipping down that slope, recognizing that you are slipping down that slope. And that's the toughest of all times, isn't it? When you're in the thick of it. But if you could be aware, then you might just be able to put out the ice pick and stop or slow down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I talk to my kids a lot about that. Whenever you're in a panicky moment, like there's an emergency, or you just go slow to go fast. The slower you go, the fewer mistakes you're going to make, the more likely you are to move through that in a better way. So yes, go slow to go fast is sometimes the best advice I could give myself, even though I don't always do it, right? There's just a lot of these things that it says easy, it does hard. Self-awareness says easy. It's just hard to do in practice because, we have an ego, we have denial, we have, oh, that's not me, or there's just lots of things that can get in our way.
Or I don't want other people to see me that way.
Yeah. Patrick Lencioni, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and prolific author and great speaker, he talks about the willingness to be vulnerable too. Brene Brown's got a lot of work out there around being vulnerable. And I think the way he describes it is, we all want to put on our Superman cape and be invulnerable. And I think working with a lot of managers, making that transition from great individual contributor, which is what got them promoted to manager, and learning how to make that transition is a real challenge. And a lot of times you get senior leaders that have that same struggle. They want to put on their Superman cape. They don't want to admit, they don't want to be vulnerable. And that's a real challenge for sure.
My title or level of accomplishment does not change the fact that I'm still fundamentally a human. It doesn't make me any more than what I am. Sorry, guys, in the Oval Office and in the Ivory Towers, you know what? You're still human. Uh, so.
And actually, whenever you put people in the leadership positions and you put them under pressure, you just increase their humanness. Your humanness is just going to show up more, right? Who you really are gets exposed in a very real way. And that's where self-awareness comes into play, is if I'm really aware of how I am at my worst, then I can be aware of, okay, in what conditions does that really present itself as a challenge for me? Mm-hmm. And then if I'm aware of those conditions, when I start to get into that moment, I can put myself on high alert. Like, okay, here I am in this situation where I have the tendency to show up at my very worst. And I need to make a strong connection between my technical skills and soft skills to show up in the best possible way. Not perfect, but the best possible way. And then I need to check in with myself as I'm in those moments. And that gets back to this aware, able, and accountable model. Right. And I think when it comes to accountability, it's being accountable for everything. Like if I hired an accountant and they only track my debits, I would fire them. And I would go out and find an accountant that's going to track my debits and my credits, because I succeed a lot. I do a lot of things well, and I need to learn how to do that more. And that's understanding my strengths and my weaknesses, which it gets into that awareness. And then am I able to bring those strengths to bear and partner with people or proactively manage my weaknesses? Because not every weakness is an opportunity. I'm 52 years old now. I'm not going to go to time management school. I have to manage my time well. I'm not really good at it, but I've done Franklin Covey and it just took me from bad to mediocre. and I'm never going to be great at it. But that's why I partner with people who are good at that, right? Like I'll assemble teams to try to help. I have to be responsible.
It's not theirs to do for you, but you can work in concert with them to get to the point you're trying to get to. This is really cool. So we've gone from awareness to able, and able is where we actually act upon those things that we've discovered in our awareness. Is that correct?
Yep. Okay. So able is that integration of those technical skills and soft skills. At some point, you've got to do something. That's a lot of times is a technical skill. As a facilitator, there's just a lot of times when I'll be working with a team as an example, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to pluck this framework because it's a useful framework, and I'm going to throw it on a chart, and then I'm going to get them engaged in this activity because that's going to drive the discussion that they need in this moment. So there's a technical skill there, mastering my craft, and there's the soft skills of learning how to navigate that and facilitate that with a group in a successful way. So I think we do need our technical skills, and we shouldn't shortchange that. But it's easy to learn a technical skill. It's easier in the moment to apply a technical skill. It's hard to do that in a really effective way. So the soft skills, we tend to call them soft skills, and we really shouldn't, but that's a debate for another day.
Hard skills.
Yeah. They say easy, do hard, right? If you're leading a team of people, there's technical skills just don't take you very far.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all the minutia in the air. It's the understanding the politics and understanding where people are, and that is a lot of soft skills at play there. And I think for a lot of people, especially in the environment we're in today, you get more increasingly flat organizations where you have fewer and fewer managers, but you have more and more influencers, people that have to get work done through influence because they're working on cross-functional matrixed teams where somebody's managing the work, but nobody in the room is reporting to the same bosses. And so you just have to be able to lead with a lot more influence than you did 30 years ago.
So what about accountability? Your third step in your program.
These are like pulling apart a ball of yarn to a degree that you really are looping through them pretty fast. But so the distinction for accountability is sort of that quick look back. It's the quick check-in with yourself to say, well, here I am. Am I moving closer to our goals and aspirations? And I think the difference between those two is a goal is something you have that's smart. It's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, whatever. It's more clear. But an aspiration is I want to have good, healthy relationships with the people that I work with. That's an aspiration.
Mhm.
I want to have great relationships with my kids. That's an aspiration. Today, I might have to make one of my kids really mad at me because, I'm going to hold them accountable for something. And I'm going to be okay with that because in the long term, that's going to make our relationship healthier, right? So there is aspirations are just less tangible than a goal. So when I say goals and aspirations, just to clarify what I mean, is am I moving closer? So accountability for me is always compassionate accountability, that I'm going to be compassionate with myself, that compassionate accountability is always in service of learning in relationships. I want to get better, so I hold myself accountable because I can learn from my successes and I can learn from my failures. I'm also doing the best I can in any given moment. I believe very strongly that we all make the very best decisions we can in the moment that we make them, based on what we know, based on our current skills and abilities and what have you. And they're not always going to work out for the best. Like I've made some really bad decisions in life. And if I look back at those, if I don't look back in those and learn, then I'm just going to keep making that bad decision over and over and over again. And you just see people doing that. So accountability is a quick check-in in the moment. Am I moving closer? And if I'm not, I need to course correct. So there's this transitional point from accountable, okay, I am moving closer. So now I'm aware and I'm able to keep moving in that direction and I'm accountable. And if I notice like, oh, we're getting off in the weeds here, well, then I can course correct and make a change in my behavior. I can make a change in the environment. I can ask a different question or whatever to re-engage in a different way. And accountability as a part of in service of learning and relationships,
Mhm.
it's important to notice the impact I'm having on other people and it's to be accountable for that. So if I've said something that hurt someone or I did something that hurt someone, well, then I'm going to be accountable for that. I'm going to say, hey, I apologize. I really screwed that up. Or that conversation we had didn't go the way that I planned. But first, I need to be compassionate with myself. And it's not accountability just to beat the crap out of myself. It's accountability to learn, get better, and strengthen relationships. And the way that we strengthen relationships is by being accountable, by saying, hey, you know what, Ed, I really apologize. That didn't come across the way I planned. And
Mhm.
when I do that, I give you the power to forgive. And in that act of forgiveness and accountability, we actually strengthen our relationship. So
Yeah.
I think what's important for me when we think about compassionate accountability is in the natural course of life, we're just going to bump into each other. When we're trying to move fast and do things, trying to be agile and be fast and get things done, I'm going to say things or I'm going to do things that are going to rub you the wrong way.
Mhm.
Not on purpose necessarily. And so I don't necessarily need to throw myself on a sword all the time either. It's just a matter of saying, hey, I noticed that bothered you and let's talk about it. And that's being
Yep.
accountable as well.
I think that's great. Your program here, these 3 steps, they're profoundly significant for any individual. How do you translate that into an organization? Or do you look at an organization as the parts that make it up? So these things apply to individuals very clearly. I can see how you can, sit such as I do in a coaching situation. I can sit with somebody and we can go through a framework like this and discuss it. How do you take that to the organizational level, piece by piece, individual by individual, or is there a more global approach to this?
Yeah. So the program that we're developing has 3 primary modules and will launch in 2024. And that's am I for self? So leading self, which is really focused on how do I apply this model for me? And then there's leading with influence, which is really a program geared towards people that work in project management, change management, on cross-functional teams. They're a little L leader. Big L would be I manage people. I have people that report to me in a hierarchical way.
Mhm.
Little L leader is I need to show up and influence people moving towards these business objectives or whatever but these people don't report to me. The way that I hold them accountable is just different because I might have an organizational mandate, but I don't necessarily have the hierarchical authority. How do I do that in a really effective way? That's leading with influence, which is a second module.
Yep.
And then there's leading with authority. It won't necessarily be called leading with authority.
Right.
I think it's sort of this interesting, nobody wants to be a manager anymore. We've sort of made managing a negative, given as a negative connotation. If you go back in the history books, manager's not necessarily a great term. Its origins are not healthy, but it is what it is. And you have people that do have direct reports that are leading people. And actually, your manager has a greater influence on your overall health and well-being than your doctor. I think intuitively know this to be true if you just close your eyes and imagine the worst manager you've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked people this question, like, okay, well, what emotion emerges for you when you think of the worst manager you've ever had? And I'll have audiences that'll be like, ugh, just, ugh, is like the general vibe. And now think of the manager, your best manager ever. How did they make you feel? What emotion merges for you? And it's like, oh, they cared about me. They inspired me. Yeah. They challenged me. They pushed me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference between leading as a manager or just managing. You don't have to lead people in a way that makes them feel, ugh. And as a manager, I think so leading that program is really geared to, okay, well, how do I use this authority in a really effective way? So how can I be aware, personally, self-aware, socially aware? Am I able to bring the right skills at the right time? And how do I effectively hold people accountable and myself accountable in a way that really strengthens trust and builds psychological safety within the organization so that people can, kind of the way I always like to think of it, and this Lori Beth Jones has written several books, and I stole this out of one of her chapters, but she talks about being kind or nice. And the real difference is kind is telling people what they need to hear. Being nice is telling people what they want to hear. The nice thing to do is to not tell someone their zippers down. You don't have to lean into this sort of uncomfortable space. Hey man, XYZ, PDQ. And that's really nice. But if you're kind and you lean into that kind of uncomfortable space and you let them know, they'll be incredibly grateful that you told them. So being honest should not be brutal. We don't need to treat honesty as a stick that we beat people up with, which gets into that, goes back to compassionate accountability. So I think for us, the way that we will partner with organizations to bring the program to life is, how do I apply this for me? That's leading self. How do I lead with influence? And I think even managers need that. That would be the second step. And then the third step would be, okay, I have people that report to me. How do I apply this model in an effective way to manage a team of people and to create an environment where that really drives employee engagement? However many questions your company has with employee engagement survey, there's only two things that matter. People need to know that they matter. I need to believe that, right? And to me, belief is knowing and feeling that I believe that I matter. It means my work matters. I'm important. I belong here. They can't do this thing without me. I matter. And they care about me. In the research, it's benevolence. They've got my back. They're looking out for my best interest. And I'm set up to be successful. They're invested in me. They're going to equip me to be successful. And if I believe those two things are true, I'm going to be more engaged. And that's what managers do. They monitor their team and they say, you know what? Ed knows he matters and Ed knows he's set up to be successful. And if that's true for you, you're more likely to do a better job every day.
Right. Kyle, you shared some fantastic information. I greatly appreciate this. I'm wondering if you have any closing remarks you'd like to leave us with as we part company here.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for the time. It's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed every time we've talked, and I just really appreciate this opportunity to spread this message around. However, I think you talked about this earlier. However, people get on this path to increase their self and other awareness, to grow their capacity to be vulnerable, because you can't build trust without it. The research just doesn't support that. And to create this sense of care. Nobody's going to buy a bumper sticker that says, I'd rather be working today. That would just be insane. But work should be a part of what helps us to thrive. I should live a thriving life, not in spite of my work, but because work is a part of it. And that's the work we're doing every day with as many companies as we can. And it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be Zeal Leadership. So however you get on this path to increase your self-awareness, to develop your ability to be a better human being every day, whether it's for your wife, your kids, your partner, your friends, family, coworkers, and increase your accountability, move closer to the kind of life you really aspire for. And so thank you.
Kyle, thank you. I really have enjoyed this conversation as well. And I ask people to look forward to the Live Life Aligned program, which will be coming out in 2024. There will be more information in the postscript here. You folks can read about ways to reach Kyle and to learn more about the program that's coming up as well. Folks, this is Ed Drozd of the Small Business Doctor. And until we meet again, I want to wish you a healthy business.